I find myself feeling challenged by the fact that May is Mental Health Month. Not because I don't think it's important that we overemphasize and put extra attention on a theme for a month or a week or a day, because it can be helpful to have extra information out there for people to digest and make sense of and deepen their awareness of themselves and understand more of the dynamics that are at play for other people, right? Having that opportunity for us to have extra emphasis on something allows us to reconsider our own perspectives and expand those perspectives. Where I'm challenged is by the words mental health. So I want to invite you to pause and notice for a moment. When you hear me say mental health, what is it you experience? What do you notice when I say the words mental health? I know for me, I feel myself move up into my head, and it's as if I'm seeking awareness into the state of my mind. Is it clear? Is it foggy? How am I doing mentally? Now, our mind is quite complex, and the mental component of it is one component of many components of our human experience. And as someone who does really put a lot of more emphasis and curiosity into who we are as a whole human being, I really struggle with the words mental health because I find words are important, and the word mental can get in the way of us remembering that we are more than our thinking mind. We are so much more than the mental activity that goes on within our mind. So my intention with this episode is for us to have a little conversation around what it means to get curious about the whole human experience. How do we deepen our awareness around what's possible for us to pay attention to and us to get curious about and us to support? Because the more we're able to notice the whole human experience, the more we'll recognize the parts of us that are stuck in survival, the parts of us that are lacking coherence, as well as being able to tune into that which is coherent. And this is key. Just like I put emphasis on recognizing that you're already whole, it's important to recognize you are coherent. There are many pieces of you that are stuck in survival, but the more we can find this place where there already is harmony, where there already is flow, where there already is this sense of being a whole human being, the more we can support the parts of us that are stuck in survival. So the more we listen to the whole human experience, support the whole human experience, the more we heal the whole human that we are. So let's get curious about what is involved in the whole human experience, because there's been a lot of emphasis put on the mental state that we find ourselves in, right? And we're not taught to listen to our body, right? So if you're someone who finds that you live in your head, you feel disconnected from your body, you don't even know what I'm talking about as I cover these different human experiences that I'll be covering shortly, know you're not alone. And I'm really glad you're here, because you even just hearing me speak to some of this is likely to spark some curiosity within you, allowing you to continue to inquire into the complexity of what makes you you. So I really encourage you to notice, where is it that while I'm talking and inviting you to inquire into some of these aspects of your human experience, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Nicole. And where are you like, yep, I feel that. I totally know what you're talking about. I totally can tune into this, right? What we're doing here is we're deepening your awareness around what you do know and also inviting your awareness into what you don't know. So let's dive in and inquire more into the human experience. What I want to name is a lot of what I'm going to speak to today is thanks to somatic experiencing, and something that Peter Levine, the founder of somatic experiencing, weaves into his teachings is SciBAM. And SciBAM is an acronym that stands for sensation, imagery, behavior, affect, and meaning. Now, everyone loves a good acronym because it allows us to just pause and be like, oh, SciBAM, what am I noticing? So for those of you that want to dive deeper into SciBAM, I encourage you to look into it, go to the Somatic Experiencing website, or look into some resources that cover SciBAM. I don't have a fancy acronym. I'm going to weave in a number of different opportunities for us to inquire and notice. And a lot of what we'll inquire into falls into SciBAM, into sensation and imagery and behavior and affect and meaning. I'm just bringing my own spin into things. But I wanted to name Somatic Experiencing and SciBAM as a big teacher and guide in me finding my own way to speak to the human experience. And what I want to invite you to do is find what lands for you. Find your own perspective of what I'm speaking to here so that it makes sense for you. It's not just something you're reciting because you learned or heard me speak to it. You know it and you're speaking from that place. That's my ultimate intention with everything I do, is for you to find your own perspective embodied knowing of what I'm speaking to. All right, so let's dive in for real. I want to start off with something that is most familiar for me, and that's the somatic experience. Now, this is relatively new for us to pay attention to, right? We are so often caught in the mind, and this somatic body is unfamiliar for us to pay attention to. So I want to be clear, somatic means of the body. So somatic experience is the experience of my body. I am paying attention to my biology and the shifts that happen within my physiology. Now, this you may already be familiar with, but you didn't even know. Let's keep it simple to start. When we're paying attention to our somatic experience, we may notice a shift in our heartbeat. That's a pretty easy one to sometimes notice, like, oh, all of a sudden my heart rate has increased slightly. Or all of a sudden my muscle tone feels a little more ready and on. All of a sudden a little more flush in the face. There's a temperature change in my body. Right? These are all signs that there's a change happening in your physiology. There's a state change happening. You're shifting a little from maybe being more relaxed to being more on, or maybe embarrassed, right? If you can think about being embarrassed and having that flushness in the face, that's you noticing your somatic experience shifting. Now, our attention can go a lot further than that, right? We can notice our heart rate. We can notice our breathing. That's another easy one to notice, like, oh, my breathing just shifted, or, oh, I haven't really taken a deep breath for a really long time, and all of a sudden I just took a really deep breath, and then I feel like I'm not breathing again, right? Heart rate, breathing, skin tone, skin color, skin temperature, those can all be relatively easy to notice. For some of you, you may also be really familiar with sensations inside your body. So maybe it's like the butterflies that are happening in the stomach, or a turning, or a squeezing and a tightening, or a fluttering, right? Or maybe there's like a jabbing happening, right? So these are all sensations that are happening within your body. Now, what's really cool is the more you refine your ability to listen to your somatic experience, the more you get to really notice the nuances of where these sensations and experiences are happening. And a lot of this has been taught to me thanks to Feldenkrais, that allowed me to really refine my ability to listen to my experiences, as well as the work that I've done with Kathy Kane, who is a somatic practitioner that really focuses on working with the body when looking at trauma. So really supporting the physiology and the state of the nervous system by really looking at the physical structure of the body. So what we can start to pay attention to is like, what's the story in the skin? What's the story in the muscle tone? What's the story in the bones? What do I feel happening in the tissue? What's happening in all my internal organs? If you've ever been to a massage therapist and they're like, vroom, they just hone into the area that's like, whoa, how did you know? That's exactly where I needed some attention, right? That's them paying attention to the body, like something's speaking to them there. There's something happening that they're picking up on pattern that's happening in your somatic experience. You can probably notice it too, right? If you experience pain, it's like, oh, you have pain in one area, but there's all kinds of parts of you that don't experience pain, right? So it's a matter of us paying attention to these experiences and then inquiring further, like, ooh, the pain I feel, it actually feels like it feels like it's in the tissue, right? And it's actually, I can find the line of where it ends and then I don't feel that anymore. Oh, that's interesting. I've never noticed that before, right? Another thing, like with the viscera, it's like, whoa, I can feel my kidneys and they feel like they're like plump and juicy, or they feel like they're all throbbing and overworked, or, oh, my spleen, ooh, there's a plumpness happening there. I seem to like the word plump, right? Or my liver, for me, my liver feels like there's a jabbingness, because that's a word. That's my experience, at least. There's a jabbingness in my liver, like, oh, like something's kind of just really poking me, right? So this is you paying attention to your somatic experiences. So I want to invite you to pause and notice right now, if you were to take in any of what I just named, whether it's something in an organ or something in these layers of yours, your skin, your bone, your muscles, your tissues, or it's something that's just a sensation and it's not quite clear where it is, or there's a change in the temperature, or you feel really cold and numb, right? This is all happening at the layer of your somatic experience. And the more you can pay attention to these layers, the more you'll recognize what's stuck in survival. And this is what's really cool and gets me so excited. This is where we don't have to focus so much on the story of what happened to us. We can really listen to what's happening in our body. We can listen to our biology and the shifts in our physiology to give us insight into where we're holding these stories deep within our cells. And the more we can listen to the story in our cells, the less we have to get caught up in all the details that are involved in our story. And instead, we get to let our cellular structures and our organs and our endocrine system and our immune system start to move into more and more harmony, into more and more coherence. Because our body doesn't want to be stuck in survival. It doesn't want to be stuck in these patterns that it finds itself in, right? But when we give the body, our body, the opportunity to be with the experiences and move through whatever it is we're stuck in, this is what allows us to move back into the rhythm that we always are, into that coherent rhythm that makes us human and part of this planet. Now, I want to carry on because that was just one component of the things that we can pay attention to when we pause and notice. And I want to also invite you to pause and notice. And is this enough information for you to just take in and get curious about? Or do you want some more information? Of course, this is something you can pause and come back to anytime. So take this and pause and inquire. Let this digest a little or carry on. The next thing I want to move into is our senses. And what's so juicy about our senses is, of course, we can notice how we smell, we can notice how we pick up on sounds, we can notice how we might receive images or get images of something, or we notice a taste in our mouth, or we just know something. To me, our senses are so powerful. And in the last episode, I talked about how things can be overcoupled or entangled, a big ball of entangled threads, or that threads can be missing. And why I want to name that here is because what we're paying attention to as we deepen our awareness of our human experience is we also start to deepen our awareness of the many threads that are at play or what threads are missing. So I'm weaving this in now because the senses can be interesting for us to pay attention to. It might be that when I hear a certain sound, I experience a certain sensation. right? I hear a car door slam and I feel my muscles tense and my eyes widen and I hold my breath and my heart rate increases a little, right? So the more we can pay attention to these many layers of the human experience, the more we can see the threads that are involved. So just notice for you with your senses, have you ever been in your day-to-day doings and all of a sudden you hear something but there isn't really a sound around you, or you get an image all of a sudden but there's no reason for that image to get there, or with sounds, like I even just think of a song that randomly comes to my head and I'm like, what is this song that's all of a sudden in my head, right? Or you can smell something. Something I find really cool when I'm working with people, especially who have had a lot of surgeries or have trauma that is entangled with anesthesia, is all of a sudden there's like a metal taste in my mouth and in their mouth as well. I've had it actually when I've been working through my own dental trauma. It's like all of a sudden I taste the freezing in my mouth. So this can be really cool for us to pay attention to because it allows us to piece together more of the puzzle when we have pieces come forward of our senses. It's like information coming forward and presenting itself. We can also just notice how we move through the world and receive information from our senses. And this is important to recognize because our senses are constantly picking up on information to analyze, is this safe, and am I okay? Can I carry on? Or is this dangerous? Right? So our senses, the more we can refine our ability to pause and notice how these senses might be entangled, but also how these senses function in our day-to-day basis, it allows us to refine our ability to know how it is we're moving through the world. So those are your senses. Again, how do you smell things? What sounds come to mind? What images appear? What tastes do you notice? What knowing is just there. What do I mean by that? You just know things. Like you know something's about to happen, or you just know something about someone before they're about to tell you it, right? It's a rich one, that knowing. The next piece I want to speak to that we can bring our awareness to, and again, feel free to pause this and come back, digest that information around sensing. If you want to go a little deeper, think about behavior. So right now, what I'm noticing in my right shoulder is there's this behavior of the shoulder wanting to roll forward. There's the muscle tone is really tight, and there's this movement, right? There's this movement that wants to happen. So my right shoulder wants to move forward, and if I follow it, I can feel the ribs on my right side start to drop, and I feel my eyes kind of get a little fuzzy. Right? So there's my sight, one of my senses that I didn't name actually, but my sight kind of goes a bit off, right? And in that sight being lost, I want to close my eyes. There's a little more dorsal tone for those of you that are familiar with the nervous system states, right? And I'm kind of having a harder time finding my words. So whatever I'm moving into when I follow this behavior is moving me into one of my vortexes, one of my patterns. And for those of you that haven't listened to episode 1, 2, and 3, I speak to the threat response cycle and I speak to our patterns and all kinds of fun, juicy things. And I also speak to that in the experiential guide, which can be downloaded on my website. So what I'm inviting us to get curious about through us paying attention to the human experience is these shifts we make so that we can become more aware of where we're stuck in the threat response cycle, where we're stuck in survival instead of just here present in coherence. So this right-sided thing is definitely pulls me into something there, right? That I'm well aware of and still teasing apart and piecing together. But a behavior is this movement that our body wants to do or keeps doing, like you've got a little weird twitch going on, right? So there's some sort of movement that shows up when you're inquiring into your experience or maybe in your everyday, right? Or it might be that, your head wants to turn to the left, but not to the right, right? I'm speaking clearly to my own behaviors that are there because there's a lot of going on within my physical body right now, right? So there's this action of wanting to turn to the left, and wanting to curl to the right. And it's like, I don't even want to look to the right. So there's, again, one of my senses of seeing. Not only did it get blurry in this other experience I'm sharing, it's like, to the right is just dark, right? You might also notice some sort of action show up when we're looking at behavior, right? So it all has to do with movements or action of some kind. Like I always have this impulse to want to run. There's this impulse to want to run, but I can't quite piece it together, but there's this action that wants to take place, or this movement and this action that follows it. So my shoulder wants to move, but then a punch wants to happen, or whatever it is for you. So you're starting to get more curious about where you're stuck in these certain behaviors that keep repeating themselves. That's good information that that's something that's stuck somewhere in the threat response cycle. Again, I speak to that in the second episode. So paying attention to the behavior of our body and these subtle movements, or sometimes big movements that we may find ourselves in, or actions that our body just seems to want to do, is such great information for us to play with, to support piecing together the puzzle. The thread pieces get to kind of weave together the more we put attention on these behaviors that are showing up. In our day-to-day, if these behaviors aren't focused on survival that they're stuck in, right, you may just be more familiar with your gait and the way you move through the world and the way you carry yourself. Maybe there's a certain posture you find yourself in, like you're always kind of slouched forward and protecting yourself a little, right, or trying to stay small. Ooh, there's another behavior. Okay, interesting. I move through my life in this behavior. What does this mean? Ooh, there's that meaning making, wanting to make sense of things. So let's dive into that next. So far we've covered somatic experiences, how we bring awareness to our body and the many different things that we can pay attention to. We're paying attention to our senses. We're paying attention to behavior, movements, actions, postures, things like that. And then we're paying attention to how we make meaning of things. Now, there's something I want to point out here, because being such meaning makers, we love to try to make sense of things. We try to analyze and make sense of, like, what is this? What does this mean? Now, that's very different than when a meaning arises organically. So I want to point this out because it can be a survival pattern for us to constantly try to make sense of something. If I understand it, then I'm okay. If I can make sense of everything, then I'm okay. If I have all the information and take all the courses and know all the things, then I'll be okay, right? If I can really know it, then I'll be okay. Ask me to pay attention to my body though? Hell no. But I know it, so I'm okay, right? So recognizing this as a survival pattern can be really helpful, because when that's online, you can pause and be like, oh wait, that's my meaning maker that's there. This part of me that loves to make meaning, or likes to understand, or likes to have the information so that I can make sense of everything, so that I can control everything and make sure I'm okay. Right? And then I can be like, okay, if I put that aside for a moment, the meaning maker can step aside. How do I then notice what other experiences I'm having? Because if you're someone who lives in meaning making, chances are you're less connected to your somatic experiences. You're less connected to your senses. You're less aware of any behavior, right? So noticing when that pattern is there, so you can inquire into what else is happening to learn more about yourself. Now, when we are paying attention to these many other layers, what happens is a meaning of what is going on within whatever we're stuck in can come forward. That's very different. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I'm working with this right shoulder thing that I got going on. So my right shoulder and my ribs, and I move myself into it, and my I'm laughing at myself. My words aren't as available. I'm in more of this dorsal state. And then all of a sudden, this meaning of like, oh wait, that was a rugby hit when I got nailed and I had the wind knocked out of me. Oh, and now because that meaning or that memory came forward, there's more information online, and all of a sudden my liver starts to shake a little. ooh, there's something happening there actually. There's like an unsticking that wants to happen in between my liver and the connective tissue and my ribs. Ooh, it's going way up into the diaphragm, right? So by me having this image and this memory come forward, I made meaning of what's happening on my right side of my body, right? I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening. I pulled that meaning out of thin air, but it brought on some response into the rest of my body, and more started happening. And that's what we want. When we're looking at our whole human experience, the more we can see the many layers that are at play, it helps piece together the puzzle of which we're incomplete in, the pattern that we're stuck in, and the threat response cycle that has yet to be completed. It allows more information to come forward to allow there to be a harmonizing and a taking shape and a organizing. And it's through that organization that we move through whatever we're stuck in, and we move into more coherence, more organization, more wholeness. So I love this. Can you tell I'm so excited about it? So with meaning making, it's important to differentiate when you're in the part of you that likes to make meaning and make sense of things and try to understand, versus when a meaning comes forward, when a memory arises out of nowhere. See these as the missing puzzle pieces that as they come forward, you're able to then make more sense of what it is you're stuck in, what it is that's incomplete, what it is that you are working towards moving through. Now, one last piece that we want to speak to here, actually two. First off, the more obvious one that I have not touched base on yet, feelings and emotions. Now for me, some of you may have already heard me speak to this in past episodes. The feeling and emotion side of things is something that I have been on an ongoing basis deepening into. And as someone who's always been fine, there hasn't been the need to feel too many of the feelings. So it's been really cool for me to inquire more into understanding the feelings wheel, for example. If you're interested in understanding more about feelings, just Google the feelings wheel, and it's a really good resource for you to be like, okay, so for me, for example, it's like, I have this sensation happening, right? I'm feeling this tightening around my ribs, and I'm holding my breath, and my brow is doing something. There's a bit of behavior in my brow, right? My jaw is clenching. There's another behavior. So I've got some behavior. I've got some somatic experiences happening. I'm feeling the muscle tone ready. And what is this? Oh, this is rage. Whoa. Now that I see it as rage, it's like, there's the anger. There's the push that wants to happen, right? So by looking at something like a feelings wheel, it can be like, oh, what is this sensation that I'm feeling? What's the feeling that's attached to it? What's the emotion that's present with that? Now, this can be really juicy especially when the feeling is missing, right? It's like, I don't really feel angry, anger, whatever, nothing really bothers me. But then when anger starts to come online, all of a sudden you have a deeper sense of what your yeses are and your nos are, and how to say, create more boundaries, whether that's energetic or actual verbal, because the words are easier for you to find, and all of a sudden you're actually able to express anger. Like, that is so juicy when that comes online, right? Because we need more healthy anger in our life. We need to be able to express what our yeses and nos are. So by being able to notice where there's incomplete emotions, part of the incomplete threat response cycle, right? I never got to get angry, and now I get to get angry, and it's not entangled in the shame and like it used to be. It's like, oh, I get to be angry and still feel like I belong here. That's huge. So what I want to invite you to become aware of is like, what feelings do you feel all the time and they feel entangled with a number of things, like they're part of the pattern, and what feelings and emotions aren't so familiar, so that when they come online, you can notice the subtle flavors of them, because that's what allows you to start to create the new pathway towards developing a healthy relationship with the anger, instead of it still being part of the entangled vortex you find yourself caught in. So noticing when these feelings come up to support the things thing that you're stuck in, to support the expression, to support the behavior to take more shape, right? To support the somatic experience to become more full in its expression, right? Tuning into these missing pieces that may be missing when it comes to emotions and feelings is really juicy. And then also noticing where things are all entangled and messy, right? It might be that, you don't feel anger because as soon as you feel anger, there's a sense of overwhelm and instead you cry. There's a great entangled mess where it's like anytime there's something that pisses you off, you end up in tears instead of anger, right? So pay attention to these patternings by noticing your feelings, by noticing your emotions. Now, something else I want to name when it comes to your feelings and your emotions is that we can also have these experiences of how we feel towards our survival patterns. And I speak to this in the experiential guide and in the 3rd episode. But this is important for us to recognize because how we feel towards ourselves. So let's say me with my right behavior, my right shoulder behavior and the ribs and how I move into a more dorsal space. See, as soon as I side bend a little to the right, I lose my words, right? I might feel really frustrated and angry and annoyed at that right side. Like, why are you still so stuck? That's a very different feeling of the... I can't even find the words because I'm a little bit in this right side right now. So let me come out of it. But it's different than when the feeling emerges because of what's wanting to happen in the right side. So notice when your feelings or your emotions that are present are towards you or towards other people, because that often shows up more, right? Oh, that person's so annoying. Oh, wait a minute. What am I feeling when I'm annoyed at someone else? It's nothing to do with them. It's me. What am I experiencing? Oh, I'm annoyed because that I'm feeling a lack of responsibility on their part, and I'm feeling frustrated because they're not meeting my needs for accountability and vulnerability, and they're just blaming. Oh, I can see them in their pattern now, and now I'm not frustrated. I'm just noticing my own feelings that are showing up in response to how they're showing up in the world, right? It's not even how they're showing up in the world. They're showing up that way. I'm having these feelings. These are mine. It's not about being frustrated and annoyed, right? So this can be, we can spend days and days and days looking at all the layers here, but this can be really juicy to pay attention to. So again, we've got one more to dive into, but feel free to pause this and just digest that a little. How is it you relate to feelings and emotions? Does anything I said feel like new information to you? Do you have a different perspective on what it means to notice the patterns that continue to loop around your feelings versus feelings that might be missing and be lacking in their healthy expression? All right, the last piece I want to speak to is the energetic experiences that we have. We are all energy, and we are part of this earth that is all energy. I see us all as frequency, and I love paying attention to these qualities because for me, there's this refinement that's ongoing on noticing the level of the vibration that someone or something might be holding. And even in my own body, I can notice that certain parts of me are vibrating at one frequency and other parts are vibrating at a different frequency. This is coherence, and in an energetic way, we can notice where there's organization, where there's flow, where there's expansion and contraction, where there's this real sense of the frequency being organized, and other places where the frequency might be really flat or dull or disorganized or not even sometimes feel like it's online. So we can really start to tune in to the frequency of who we are and the frequency of each other and the frequency of this planet. There's a real ability for us to refine the the way we tune into the vibrations of ourselves and the vibrations of the planet. And to me, this is like so incredible to pay attention to, because it allows us to really see beyond the I, the individual, the mind, the thinking mind at least. And it allows us to really expand into the recognition that we are so much more than just this physical body in this three-dimensional form. So noticing how we experience frequencies, how we experience vibration. How do you notice auras, whether that's feeling someone's energy, or some people will even see energy, right? You may also notice that you pick up on certain information, right? There's this intuition that you just have access to, like the knowings, the voyances, not the voyances, the clairs. I always forget what they all are, but right, like the deep knowing that we have, and the ability to just sense things or see things or feel things or hear things, right? There's these senses, but they're also tuning into the energetic realms, and we're getting information through that. We also then may have these psychic abilities that we can tune into that allow us to gather information that is beyond our knowing. And this is where, at least for me, when I'm playing with intergenerational pieces, past life pieces, paying attention to the energy, paying attention to any psychic information that comes through, any intuitive downloads that comes through, or any information that is a little abstract and a little esoteric. It's like, who cares where it's coming from? Who cares what it is? It doesn't matter. It's still information about my human experience that I can tune into, and I can see how that supports me in piecing together more of the puzzle. So there you have it. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll just review quickly. Again, we covered the somatic experiences, right? How we notice our body and the language of our biology, the shifts our physiology makes. We're aware of our senses and how our senses pick up on information or give us information or are entangled in information, right? The behaviors, the movements we make, the actions, the postures, the feelings and the emotions, the meaning making, the memories that come forward, the organic process of that versus our patterns, and then lastly, these energetic experiences we have. So there you have it, the human experience, quite complex, but also not. All we need to do is pause and notice and deepen our awareness around these human experiences and have more curiosity of, again, the entangled pieces, refer to the previous episode about that, or the untangled pieces, right? And the more that we can tune into this information, the more we can really piece together the puzzle pieces that are stuck in survival, supporting ourselves to heal those pieces of us so that more and more of us end up in this coherent experience. So there you have it, the human experience. I encourage you to come back to this episode again and again. This is an ongoing practice, right? And again, my way of teaching is in hoping that you deepen your own perspective and understanding of what I'm speaking to here. So please take what you take from here, come back to this episode to retain more, to digest more, to integrate more, to make sense of more, to find more of your own perspective, of your own human experience, because it's through that you can create real change, through your own knowing of yourself, that you will create change in so many different ways. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'm so excited for you to deepen your awareness of your human experience. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that this episode has provided you with new perspectives and insights. And if you haven't already, head to my website to download the experiential guide. Until the next time, I invite you to continue to pause and notice.